All right, welcome everyone to the second last lecture of class. Last lecture we focused on California, and today we're going to be focusing on San Diego more specifically. So let me go ahead and share my screen and get everything started. All right, San Diego. So we've already touched on several projects and local initiatives looking at conservation. So today I'm going to touch on a few others and kind of a variety of different projects and organizations that are working more towards conservation science and others that are working more towards conservation policy, and particularly take a look at what some of the more, I guess, local government initiatives that are taking place as well. Yep, it's basically what I just said. As far as the outline, reminders, we only have one more lecture, which is on Wednesday. There is our last discussion leader on Wednesday as well, so make sure you do the reading and participate in the discussion leader. We do have 2 extra credit assignments that are both due today at 2 p.m., so you have till 2 p.m. today to get those done. We still have our online final exam coming up, and I do ask you to make sure you're checking Blackboard and checking your grades and your assignments just to make sure everything looks as you would expect. There's been no mistakes or anything like that. So please do go to Blackboard and check your grades. Obviously, you won't have your final grade until after the final exam has been graded, but it'll give you, somewhat an idea of where you stand. If you see anything that doesn't look right, or there's an assignment you turned in that's not there, please do email me immediately. As soon as the final exam closes, I'm going to finish the grades and turn them in. So check early is what I'm trying to say as far as what Blackboard looks like and what your grades look like. So for the final exam, it's going to be open starting May 7th and closing May 14th. So that gives you an entire week to take the exam. I'm going to close it May 14th at noon. So that's not midnight like the midterm, at noon, so I can finish grading and get my grades turned in those days. That is only 2 weeks before my due date, so that's why I want to get things graded earlier as opposed to later. If you take the exam on the 7th, I will get your grade done on the 7th. So there are some advantages of turning in your grade sooner, or doing the exam sooner. The format is going to be similar, to the midterm, so expect the same types of questions, and also the same kind of format. So starting off with some of those more, multi-choice questions, check the box kind of questions, as far as having written questions and an essay question as well. The one thing I'm going to add to the final is also a few end of the semester survey questions to get your opinions about the class, how it's gone, what you would change, what you would keep. And those are going to be graded, but they're going to be graded based on if you do them or not based on your answer. So write whatever you want, please be honest, because I do really appreciate your feedback. I'll be teaching this class again next spring. So anything that you all see that can improve the class is obviously much appreciated. The exam is going to be the same type of format, so closed book. You get one page, front and back, of handwritten notes, just like last time. So I'm going to try to do a little bit better job of timing the exam. So where if someone has those notes written out and ready to go, you'll be fine as far as time goes. However, if you're trying to go back to the PowerPoints and look through there, you might run out of time. So that's kind of how that's going to work. Just like last time, you can view all questions at once. You can scroll through them. And I would strongly suggest that you all do that just to see what kind of questions there are, which will help you kind of plan your time a little bit better, as there were several students who ran out of time for the essay last time because they didn't realize there was an essay at the end. So this is something I'd really recommend you do with all your exams you ever take, is just do a quick skim through them and see what kind of questions there might be. You don't have to start with question number 1. You can go ahead and start with the essay question if you want. So it just depends on, I guess, your exam taking strategy. And I said I'll grade them as they're completed. So I'm trying to get the grading done ASAP. and they will close after a certain amount of time, just like with the midterm. If you have any questions about the final, feel free to email me or come to my Zoom office hours on Mondays. All right, so the learning objectives for today, kind of like I did with California, I'm going to go through some of the basic information about San Diego, and then I'm going to dive into some more specific conservation-related projects going on in San Diego. So a little bit about the history. Once again, it's going to be very rudimentary, just like with California. Historically, this is the home of the Kumeyaay people, which you probably have heard about, and SDSU does a somewhat good job to make sure that that's acknowledged during public presentations. There are signs around campus, things like that. First visited by Europeans in 1542 by Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo. So that is Cabrillo National Monument, kind of like we talked about with California, is named after him. San Diego, just like California, was mostly governed by Spain, but then became part of Mexico in 1821. And also, just like California, following the Mexican-American War, San Diego became part of the U.S. Obviously, San Diego has a very big military presence today and has basically had this large military presence since the time of World War II, when San Diego became a major hub of military and defense activity. Even my grandparents settled. My grandfather was based in San Diego in the Navy during World War II, and then my grandparents settled here actually after World War II. So there's quite a few families that experienced that, and there was a huge boom of population then after World War II as, you know, the folks who were fighting in World War II came back and settled in San Diego. Demographics, you can see behind my head, this is a map of San Diego. It's not a very square-looking city. It's got a lot of weird little branches. And covers kind of quite a bit of territory, actually, if you look all the way up to the north and then all the way down to the Mexican border. There are obviously some of the suburbs in there, but it covers quite a bit of land. As a population, San Diego City itself has a population of 1.5 million, and San Diego County has over 3 million people. So overall, San Diego is actually the 8th largest city in the United States and the 2nd largest in California. And a lot of this is because the land area of San Diego is massive, where you have San Francisco, which the actual land area of San Francisco City is very small, but the greater Bay Area is massive. San Diego has relatively few suburbs compared to San Francisco or LA. So it's actually the city itself where most of the population is. It's not out in the suburbs necessarily. And then if you look, even expand this down into Mexico, the San Diego-Tijuana metro area has about 5 million people. So Mexico is going to add 2 million people to the 3 million people who are already in San Diego County. So a fairly large metropolitan area more broadly. Some of the largest economic sectors, these should not be very surprising to you. Defense, military, tourism is massive, international trade, and then San Diego actually has quite a bit of a tech boom going on right now, including researching, manufacturing, biotechnology. Also, just because of its geography, San Diego Bay is a deep water port, which is why you could have the really large military ships docked there. And because of that, it's the only major submarine and shipbuilding yard on the entire West Coast because of this unique deep water bay. Hosts the largest naval fleet in the world. That's very impressive to me. And in 2012, for example, San Diego hosted over 32 million tourists, and I'm sure this number is probably just increasing over time. This is just the year I could find that stat for. So tourism is an incredibly important industry to the economy in San Diego. Demographics. So San Diego itself is still quite diverse, just like California more generally. You can see the majority 45%, it's not quite the majority, but the largest percentage is non-Hispanic white, followed by Hispanic or Latino, Asian, and then Black and African American. And this map I find really interesting because, you know, you can look at these stats and say, oh, that's fairly diverse. But when you look at the map, it kind of paints a different picture because you can see how these different ethnic groups are actually clustered together in different areas. Not so surprisingly, along the coast and closer to downtown where housing prices are very, very high. You mostly have white, non-Hispanic whites. Closer down to the border, in more of the central and southern parts of San Diego is more Hispanic. And then you have these kind of green patches. I live in Mira Mesa, which is up here, and it's kind of this strange, not strange anomaly, but it's a very Asian neighborhood. So that's why there's kind of this green bubble up here, as well as a few other green bubbles other places. Okay, sorry, move my head again. So the environment, also very similar to California, San Diego's environment is incredibly diverse. Geography, climate, landscapes, ecosystems. It ranges from semi-arid and Mediterranean climates are the kind of two major climates. San Diego, which is probably why it has so many tourists, is known for its warm, dry summers and fairly mild winters. Has over 200 days that are above 70 degrees, which we're in, you know, right now is the case. And as I said, fairly dry, so 9 to 13 inches of rainfall annually, depending where in San Diego you are measuring rain. This is due to the city's microclimates. So you go from sea level all the way up to Cowles Mountain, which is at almost 1,600 feet, just within the city limits. So this kind of topography creates a lot of microclimates, which is why the weather varies so much and the temperature varies so much depending on where you're located in the city, as well as rainfall. That also varies quite a bit depending on where you're located in the city. Then I found this last stat really interesting. Looking at the water and the ocean, the average surface temperature of water at the Scripps Pier has increased almost 3 degrees Fahrenheit since 1950. So that's an indicator of how the climate in San Diego might be changing, and particularly the impacts of climate change on our local oceans. So I found that really, really interesting. As we just talked about climate change recently, there's, you know, local evidence of ocean temperature rise. So the ecological importance. This is something I didn't realize until I started digging into this topic, but San Diego is has an incredible diversity of wildlife and plant species. So it says San Diego has one of the highest counts of animal and plant species that appear on the endangered species list of all counties in the United States. More than 40 threatened and endangered species. It's very diverse bird populations with 492 different species of birds. And also has some of these large, important natural areas that are located around the city as well. So I had a really hard time finding a map of the different protected areas in San Diego. This is as close as I could get, and that's not very good, but you can see a lot of the green and the red. Some of them denote different natural areas, protected areas around the county. This is obviously not a complete map at all, because I had a hard time finding one of just San Diego County, but they're spread out all the way from the ocean all the way to the desert. You can find different types of protected areas throughout San Diego. We'll go into this a little bit more depth. You can find better maps of the marine protected areas. So these are the major marine protected areas that are along our coastline. There's quite a few. They range from no-take areas to, you see the red, you can see it, sorry, at the top, the red, purple, and blue tell you what kind of marine protected area. So state marine reserve, state marine conservation area, and we went through what each of these means in a previous lecture. All right, so now I'm going to spend some time talking about different conservation efforts throughout San Diego. And because this is obviously a really broad topic, focus on the efforts of these 5 different projects and organizations. Some of them, like I said, are more research focused and some of them are more policy focused. So you'll see as we go through this. So the first one is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, has a fairly large presence in San Diego. I'm asking you now if you have not watched the assigned reading, which is really a video for today, go ahead. This isn't a YouTube video, this is a Vimeo video. So I have the exact address written out there. Please go ahead and pause this video and go watch that video if you haven't done that already. Okay, welcome back. After viewing this video again, as part of your registration, attendance, and participation points, I have a few questions here for you to answer. So the video obviously spends a lot of time looking at the Tijuana River National Estuarine Research Reserve, which I have not visited yet, but it sounds like a really interesting place. So you can go to their website, which I have here, trnerr.org. And just look up these few things. So number one, what is the mission or goal of the reserve? And what cooperating government agencies co-manage the reserve? So this is particularly, a research, it's a science-focused reserve, which is a bit different than others that might be more based on conservation management or on recreation. So what is their mission? And then do click under the research tab and find a specific research program and provide a short 2 to 3 sentence summary. So go ahead, you can pause this video, go ahead and do that now, or you can wait to the end. The same questions are written in the discussion, on the discussion board for the attendance and participation points for today. Okay, so that was pretty short on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but hopefully that video does explain a lot about how important San Diego is for birds particularly, and migrating birds. So the next organization I want to talk about is the Nature Conservancy, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. They're one of the largest, most prominent, I guess, conservation organizations in the world. They work not only in the United States, they work internationally all over the world. And they, do work in San Diego as well. So they have, it's a quote from their website. They say San Diego is the most biologically rich county in the continental US. However, is also, sorry, I didn't read that right, is however also the most threatened. So they're saying the biological importance of San Diego is high, and also the threats to that biodiversity is also high, which is why focusing on conservation in San Diego is incredibly important. So the Nature Conservancy, they partnered with quite a few different organizations throughout San Diego, both public agencies like U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, local government agencies, and private individuals to acquire land. So that's one major thing the Nature Conservancy does, is they buy land to manage themselves or to manage in cooperation with some of these public agencies. And they influence policy with respect to development, land use, and public conservation funding. So they have kind of two major strategies for conservation in San Diego. One is to actually acquire land for conservation, and one is to work to support policies that promote conservation. So here's just some of the successes. In San Diego, they have conserved or put aside 35,000 acres of land. That is quite a bit. They've helped expand the San Diego Wildlife Refuge, which provides critical habitat for several endangered species. They've also created more in the San Diego backcountry, which is more of the eastern part of the county. So they've helped create new preserves, including the San Isabel Open Space Preserve and the Ramona Grasslands Preserve. And they've also actually, because San Diego is obviously located in a border region, they also do work cross-border. So they work with the Mexican government as well to look at international conservation efforts, because, species don't just stay in their country, right? They're going to move beyond borders that humans have put up. And that can be a problem, actually, when you have these big border walls that might hinder migration for some species, such as mountain lions or some of those bigger species that can't fly over the walls, or somehow get around the walls. So that's one issue they're working on in San Diego, and actually quite an important one. So that's the Nature Conservancy. So the next organization I want to talk about is the San Diego Zoo, which is San Diego Zoo Global is the name of the nonprofit that runs the San Diego Zoo and the San Diego Safari Park. So zoos, how to word this, zoos can oftentimes be controversial, right? Because you're keeping oftentimes endangered or rare species. You're keeping them in confinements, in cages, which range in quality depending on what zoo you're at, which is kind of a negative. And once you've actually gone places and seen a lot of these animals in their natural habitat, going to a zoo is often kind of depressing, to be honest. However, zoos also do provide a lot of support for conservation education, science, policy, and management. And the San Diego Zoo places a high importance on the later. So instead of just being a place where you can go look at animals for your own entertainment, it's a place that's really trying to support conservation initiatives all over the world. So if you look at their mission, it says the San Diego Zoo Global is a conservation organization committed to saving species around the world. And the more you poke around in their website, the more you see that really is what they're trying to do. They're about conserving species and keeping different species from going extinct, basically. So they have, the San Diego Zoo, outside of the zoo itself, is projects in 45 countries, collaborating with hundreds of different partners, and they actually run 5 different conservation field stations. So while the average visitor might go to the zoo just to see the animals, the kind of funding that the zoo raises goes out into the field actually where these animals are to help conserve them where they are. Some of the funding, because I think it's always important to look at how different nonprofits are funded and where that money goes. So San Diego Zoo, like I said, is a nonprofit, mostly funded through grants, membership revenue, ticket sales, merchandise sales, and food. So the actual, how the ticket sales, and the tickets are quite expensive, that actually goes towards some of their conservation work as well. You're not just paying to get into the zoo, you're paying, you're paying for them to do the work that they do. They also actually do receive revenues from property taxes collected by the city of San Diego. So the number I found was in 2015 that amounted to about $12 million a year from property taxes. They have a total earnings of $270 million. I was surprised by that number. That is significantly high. Obviously, running the zoo and the safari park takes up a good amount of that budget, and then the rest goes to their conservation science and research projects. Based on one kind of organization, Charity Navigator, that tries to rate different charities and how good they are. So how much money actually goes to what their mission is, how much overhead is there, how much maybe corruption. San Diego Zoo Global has a score of 93.81 out of 100, which is actually quite good, I would say. Some organizations take out 50% for overhead. So while you might be donating $1, only 50% is actually going towards, the cause, which can be kind of off-putting. So according at least to this one metric, San Diego Zoo Global actually does a fairly good job of using those revenues for their stated mission. So the research side of San Diego Zoo, if you go to the San Diego Zoo Institute for Conservation Research, this is really the meat of their conservation work. So they have quite a wide variety of different research teams. You can see here on the left, they have whole teams working on things like population sustainability, recovery, ecology, community engagement. It's obviously very important as they learn from some of the community-based conservation projects, disease, conservation genetics, reproductive sciences, plant conservation, biodiversity banking, and it said their main mission is really to protect species from going extinct. So you can see this is really reflected in the different research teams that they've put together. So San Diego Zoo is actually doing a lot of cutting edge research on conservation. In addition to that, that's obviously in complementing or complement some of the actual projects that they work with on the ground to help conserve species. So I just pulled out a pretty random, broad list of different conservation initiatives. Like I said, they have hundreds of projects all over the world. So here's just a few of them that I found interesting. But they study leopard ecology and community attitudes towards leopards in Africa. They do have an online Wild Watch Kenya citizen science program. So they do have a citizen science project in Kenya, which is interesting because we've talked a lot about citizen science. Project understanding the ecological needs of Sumatran tigers. They're doing elephant research in Myanmar, working on rescuing desert tortoises. So that's more of a local conservation project. And then doing habitat assessment of forest and canopy cover in Madagascar. So these are all really important research projects that also do contribute to the conservation of those habitats and those wildlife species. If you want to learn more, go dig around in their website. They have a lot of information about the different kinds of projects that they have. Another good resource is obviously YouTube. They have put together videos. So please do go if you want to see kind of another spattering of some of their international projects that are going on. Please go to watch this YouTube video, San Diego Zoo Global 2017 Conservation, which kind of highlights, at least for 2017, what some of their major initiatives were. So please pause this video and go and watch that. All right, so that's the zoo. Now I'm going to move on to some of the local government initiatives. So San Diego, the city of San Diego actually has a whole part of their webpage devoted to sustainability. So if you go to sandiego.gov/sustainability, that's where you'll find a lot of their sustainability plans and policies. Here's just a few that I've picked out. I'll talk about some of these, but I was actually quite impressed, to be honest, at some of the different plans that San Diego has in place now and is planning to place in the future. So I highly encourage you to dig around that website as well. One thing they have, one major project is Smart City San Diego. Might have heard of this or not. The major objective of Smart City is to improve the region's energy independence, empower consumers to use electric vehicles, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and encourage economic growth. So becoming a smart city basically means becoming more efficient while still maintaining the economy. Some of their programs they have under this kind of umbrella of Smart City include Metro Lab Network. So the goal of that, which should resonate with you in this class, is to bring together researchers at UCSD with city decision makers. So to actually bring together researchers that are researching topics of sustainability with the policymakers and with the people who are actually writing these policies, which is amazing. That's what we want, right? We want scientists helping to inform policy. So by using this tool, Metro Lab Network, they deploy solutions to improve infrastructure, services, and other public sector priorities. There's also an effort called Solar to EV project, which is about getting more charging stations for electric vehicles around the city that are powered by solar. So to have solar panels powering these electric vehicle charging stations. Another smaller thing is they've installed over 3,000 LED street lamps. So the city themselves is trying to use less energy just in their overall infrastructure, which includes street lamps. And the Smart City Initiative is particularly interesting, in my opinion, because it involves public and private sector folks. As I said earlier, San Diego actually has a very booming technology sector. So they're taking advantage of that, collaborating with, the government like City of San Diego, collaborating with San Diego Gas and Electric, General Electric, UCSD, Clean Tech San Diego, and it's those kind of collaborations, those more innovative collaborations that I really do think are the way forward as far as linking science to policy and creating some of these new sustainability initiatives. So anyways, that's my rant about their Smart City project. They also have a focus on trees and urban forestry. So according to this program, or this umbrella, trees are essential to meeting San Diego's commitment to climate change, carbon sequestration, stormwater runoff reduction, and water conservation. So the city of San Diego really sees urban forestry as playing a critical role both in mitigating the impacts of climate change, but also with conserving water and managing those massive kind of mini floods that happen when it rains here. If there are a lot more trees on the landscape, that helps the water soak into the ground a bit better. So they have a bunch of different policies. Here's one of them. Public tree protection. This protects trees in public rights of way. So that's along sidewalks, along roads, kind of like this picture here, and city-owned lands. So it protects trees from being chopped down by people. Really kind of neat is this Free Tree San Diego program. So this applies to private landowners like me. I could ask the city to bring me a tree, and then I can plant it in the area between the sidewalk and the street curb. And that will be managed by the city of San Diego. So it's a really great way to help kind of increase the greenery in your neighborhood. If you want to plant a tree between, next to the sidewalk and the street curb, San Diego will give you a seedling for free. And there also are community forestry advisory boards, which help these boards make decisions on policies, where trees should be planted, and things like that. So if this is something that interests you, please check this out on their website. You can, take part maybe in a community forestry advisory board, become part of the board, so, things like that. There are opportunities like that available. Maybe the most impressive is City of San Diego's Climate Action Plan. So this was actually released in 2015, and it's supposed to be updated this year. I don't know if that's been done or not. There's the website if you want to actually read the whole climate plan. I skimmed through it. It was not the longest plan I've ever skimmed through, but not the shortest. But if you do want to know all the details about what they're aiming for, that's a good way to learn about it. So the objective is fairly simple. The objective is by 2035 to eliminate half of all greenhouse gas emissions in the city, and then have all electricity to be from renewable sources. So this is more aggressive than California's state plans. And I actually really like the simplicity of this. It gives very clear, manageable objectives to accomplish by 2035. There also is a focus, if you read through the plan, on jobs and economics, which is something that's obviously important. You want to make this transition while still providing jobs for folks. So this program is supposed to foster other economic programs to create well-paying jobs in green industries. So someone has to work on these interventions, work on these policy solutions, work on the technology behind this. They're also advancing this idea called City of Villages, which I really like, which is about creating these walkable communities and walkable neighborhoods, which obviously can help cut down on greenhouse gas emissions. And then training. Training is important. You have to have the people who can install the solar panels and do those types of jobs. So San Diego State University Extension is one place where people can get that kind of training, as well as local community colleges. So you can't expect infrastructure to change without having the trained personnel to do that. So that's, I think, a pretty forward-thinking part of this plan. All right, so now I want you to tell the city what you think. They actually have a survey that any citizens can take called Our Climate, Our Future. And the point is to really gather the voices of San Diego citizens. What do you think should be done? What kind of different policy options do you support? And what kind of individual actions do you also support? Was that expanding transit, increasing the number of electrical vehicle, charging stations, things like that. So I went and took the survey, and I thought it was really, really interesting. So please, this is another in-class activity for today. If you're at the website, the survey was very obvious, or you can go to this URL. And let the government know what you think. This is your chance to actually influence policy. What do you think should be done? The survey took me about 10 minutes, so I'm gonna cut this lecture a little bit short so you have plenty of time to go take the survey. And then after taking the survey, just write a short paragraph summarizing some of your responses to some of the questions. So yeah, just a short summary of what, some of the questions they ask you. So some of the questions do focus on like, would you be willing to do this? Would you be willing to do that? As well as your own perspective. So just a very short summary. This will be part of your attendance and participation points for today. Okay, so before I go on to the next, please pause this and go take our climate or future survey. Okay, so kind of the last project or group I want to talk about today is actually the county of San Diego. So the last section was about the city, and this is about the county. And the county has these MSCPs, or Multiple Species Conservation Program. It's really interesting. So the goal is to preserve San Diego's native habitats and wildlife for future generations. So just like most of these conservation organizations, their mission is to help, conserve the ecosystem around San Diego. And this one works across political boundaries. So there's actually 3 different areas. There's the south part of San Diego County, the eastern part, and the northern part. And the goal of these plans or programs is to balance conservation efforts with urban growth. So that includes outlining certain building regulations and permitting processes in order to support what they call here healthy community growth. So not just unplanned urban sprawl, but growth that is conscious of local conservation efforts and doesn't necessarily get in the way of a lot of the local conservation efforts as well. So this program ensures compliance with U.S. Endangered Species Act. So if a developer wants to develop on a land where there's endangered species, make sure that the guidelines for the U.S. Endangered Species Act are followed. Also the State Endangered Species Act and the State Natural Communities Conservation Planning Act. So these multiple species conservation programs, well, you might think it's just a conservation program, it actually has a lot to do with urban planning. So if that's something you're interested in, I'd highly recommend you dig around more. Here's a few websites you can find some more information and actually read through some of these plans. So the goal, as I said, is to provide kind of larger connected preserve areas. So instead of having a bunch of little green spaces and parks that are totally disconnected, is to create some of these bigger areas where species can move around a bit better. And it's really done at the habitat level, not at the species by species or area by area. The goal of this is to make conservation more efficient and effective at preserving the system, as well as to make urban planning more efficient and effective. As I said, there's 3 different plans depending on South, North, or East County. So here's a map where these different areas are. So the purple here, which apparently runs all the way up here, is part of South County. East County is a massive area, and then North County. And this, excludes a lot of the more very urban areas have been left out of these programs. So this is more about urban sprawl into those more rural, areas that are at least currently more rural. So South County, this program has already been approved. It was approved way back in 1998, and it covers about the habitat for about 85 different species, which is quite impressive. They've worked to protect almost 100,000 acres of unincorporated land. And most of that's managed by the Bureau of Land Management. So that's quite a large amount in what's not a huge area, to be honest, as far as the southern part of San Diego. Just a few areas. The primary area is the Otay Mountain, Kuchama Cooperative Management Area, which I assume is down near Otay. But yeah, anyways, that's just one example of a piece of land that is part of the South County's plan. So the other 2 parts of the county are a little bit less established, I guess. So the North County plan is still in development. there was a public outreach meeting, move my head again, in 2017, so a few years ago. And then from that outreach meeting and from other things, a report about different review options and different options for assessment for North County was put together. If you want to read that, there's the link for that. And it actually, they said this plan has not been approved and not been implemented yet. So you actually still have time to get your voice heard. So if you live in North County and want to partake in their stakeholder survey, I have the link down here. You have until May 14th to go ahead and do that, which is coming up soon. So you're not required to, but if that's something that you want to learn more about and actually have your voice heard about what North County should do as far as its conservation and urban growth plans, please do go ahead and take that survey. East County is also in development. I had a hard time finding information about the East County plan, except that the preliminary draft map was produced in 2008. But the plan is still, 12 years later in development because of the county budget and staff reductions have caused the progress of the East County to slow significantly. And the website basically just said once this is resolved, the plan development will continue. So I don't know what that means. As I said, I tried to poke around. There's obviously some kind of politics or something going on in the background that I don't understand or don't know about, because it seems like this plan is just totally stalled. So if you live in East County and want to learn more about this, do please poke around and let me know what's going on if you can figure that out. But yeah, this is something that I hope does go forward in the future because East County covers a lot of land. So having this plan being implemented and enforced would help with conservation efforts in San Diego quite significantly. All right, so I'm almost done with today's lecture. I hope today's been a little bit more upbeat, I guess, than some of the previous lectures or the climate change lecture particularly. So what can I do is I've been trying to include a little bit more about what we all can do as far as getting involved in local conservation efforts. Here's just a sample of, some of the different organizations we talked about today, as well as a few others that have active volunteer programs. Maybe not active right at this moment, but generally active volunteer programs. If you want to work with a different organization, go ahead and look at their website. They probably also do have volunteer programs as well. Most organizations do, to be honest. And if, working with one of these organizations is something that you want to do in the future, the best first step that you can take is volunteering with them. That'll not only get your foot in the door as far as getting experience and meeting some of the staff, but it'll honestly let you know if that's something you want to do, that's actually a kind of job that you'd like to do. So as I said here's the links for these 4 different organizations. If there's something you want to get involved in, they have different types of activities that you can help with. And the big thing, which is also what Dr. Bergen talked about in his lecture on water conservation, is really gaining experience is critical as far as finding a career in one of these fields in the future. Now, obviously, getting a bachelor's degree, which you all are doing now, is a huge step towards that goal. The other kind of tier, so you have the education side. The other side is really experience, because most of these jobs are not only going to want you to have the education, they're also going to want you to have some experience, which can be really frustrating, honestly, when you're just out of college and you're seeing these jobs that want a bachelor's degree and 2 years of experience. And you think, how am I going to get this experience? Well, go ahead and start as early as you possibly can, is my advice to you. Volunteer, there's lots of internships. Some positions do require graduate school, so you might need a master's or even a PhD. Not necessarily for a lot of these jobs, but for some of them. It's also important to maybe identify places you might want to work in the future. Like I was saying, if you want to work for the city of San Diego and their urban planning, look into what internships and volunteer opportunities they specifically have, because that'll get you some really kind of unique, specific experience that will only help you get a job later on. Gain related job experience. So even if you're at the very bottom of the totem pole, just go ahead and do it. For example, when I was in university, I had a work-study job working at the local zoo. So I was up in Seattle, up in Tacoma actually, and managed to land a work study job at the local zoo, which was amazing, but it was definitely not glamorous because literally what I was doing was cleaning out goat poop from the petting zoo. That was my job. Is that the most glamorous thing to do? No, but it does help you get your foot in the door, right? It's some kind of experience you have. And if I later on wanted to have maybe looked at an internship at the zoo or like a job as a zookeeper at the zoo, that experience would have helped me out significantly and still helped me out significantly. No, it kind of made me realize that I don't really want to be a zookeeper. And, you know, learning what you don't want to do is almost just as valuable as learning what you do want to do as far as narrowing down your career choices. Also very much encourage you to get involved with school clubs at SDSU, as well as different community organizations. There's boards and committees and things like that that you can get involved in now. There's no reason to wait. So really, on top of the education, really the key part is just to get as much experience as you possibly can. All right, so that's actually it for today's lecture. I wanted to leave some extra time because there's those surveys in there. And some digging around in the websites as far as your attendance and participation credit goes. So just like always, go to Blackboard, there's May 4th participation, create a thread, and answer the questions for that. As I said, Wednesday is the last lecture of the semester. I'm gonna keep it on the shorter side because we do have our last discussion leader. And really we're gonna focus on kind of looking forward. So what does the future of conservation and science policy look like? So please do go ahead and read this reading for today, for that day. And yeah, I look forward to our last lecture. And as always, please email me if you have any questions about anything. So with that, thank you. Go complete the rest of the participation and attendance activity. And I will see you for our last lecture on Wednesday.